everybody. Thanks everybody who's come out on this finally beautiful spring day. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate you caring about our kids, our schools, our community. I'm Jamie Clapham. I live out in Somerset. I am representative for Area 6, which is the largest, most difficult geographic district there is for a school board. So I am the far west, from Somerset to Nemo Road to Countryside South to Hart Ranch. So if you know anybody that lives in any of those places, let me know. So I just, I'm a physical therapist by trade. I have 2 children in the district. I'm a child of a 50-year educator. My husband is an educator. My sister is an educator. My in-laws are retired educator. Education's in my blood. And I just got to a point seeing decisions made and seeing not the best done for our kids and our educators that I knew it was the right thing to do, to step up and do this and to be a voice, to speak for our educators, to speak for our students. We are at a critical point in this district. We don't currently have a search committee for a superintendent. We have educators leaving by 2 and 3 dozen at a time. And that's unstable, and children need stability. We can't afford for our district to be this unstable. We need stability, we need unity, we need to step up and take care of our kids in this community. I feel very strongly that we need to address the facilities. When we have students, I've talked to students, it's been really great talking to students last night, tonight, in recent weeks, when they say, oh, well, the ceiling in our orchestra room caves in sometimes. That should never be a thing in a school. When you have, when Michael's described to me the bucket he needed in his classroom when he was at Central, because it might rain in your classroom. That's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. Our children, their education is valuable, and we need to treat it that way. And we have to make changes. Teachers, say no profession exists without teachers teaching that profession. And we need to get to a place where we respect our educators, where we support our educators, where they feel valued and heard, and we need that culture change. We're in a place where you can go to one school in the district and there's some things available, in another school in the district there's other things available, in another school in the district. We're not New York City. We need to work on unity and equitable education for every student in this district. And yes, I live in Area 6, but I want to fight and stand up for every student, for every educator, for every staff, because all of them deserve a voice, all of them deserve respect, all of them deserve to be valued. And I hope that I'm given the opportunity to lift up, to celebrate, to support our educators, and to make this community and our education better.
I let Jamie go first because then I don't have to say as much, because same. So a little bit about me. My name is Michael Birkeland. I am running to represent Area 3, which is kind of the west side of town, kind of by Canyon Lake. So kind of between Sheridan Lake Road and Canyon Lake Drive. Hope everyone is okay. So kind of that area. I have a little bit of Red Rock as well, and a little bit up kind of by Skyline, but that's kind of the main general area. It's right there by Canyon Lake. I was a teacher in the district for 6 years. I taught math at Central High School. There's a lot going on out there. Yeah, hopefully everything's okay. I taught math at Central for 6 years and resigned for many of the reasons that Jamie already mentioned, and mostly to be a voice for the educators who could not. My last couple of years there was talking with my colleagues and finding out how they were feeling, and the amount of colleagues that said that they were scared to speak up because they might lose their job or couldn't go anywhere else because this was stable and they needed stability for their family. I was lucky enough to be in a position where I could take that risk of leaving the district and be a voice for those who could not be. So that's one of my big main goals, is being that voice for those who may not have a voice that they feel comfortable sharing. And that goes for students, staff, everyone. And the other main thing, the other big thing that I want to talk about is that staff affect our students so much. Number one thing in any kind of research study that you find, if you ask what is the most effective thing, it is a teacher, a qualified and caring and competent teacher. All the other stuff is important too. There's all those hatty stuff, we can get into all that. But the number one thing is that qualified teacher. So by putting our teachers and our students and our teachers and staff first, we are making that big difference with our students. Trying to think of anything that I have that Jamie didn't already say. The leapfrogging situation was another reason that I left, but that's actually been taken care of a little bit. But one thing with that is we need to work on some sustainability with that. 6 years ago, we also had a new salary schedule, and then that came to a stall. So forward planning, I'm glad you said that. Forward planning is kind of a big thing. We have some building issues that we need to fix. It rained in my classroom, the doors don't shut at South Park. You pick the building, there's something wrong with it probably. So we do have some issues to fix now, but we also need to start looking forward. How do we keep our buildings maintained? A lot of people like to compare us to Sioux Falls, whether it's in academics or in sports, and I would tell those people, Sioux Falls passes bonds. Sioux Falls supports education. Sioux Falls has just an entirely different community aspect. And that's one thing with Jamie and I's hopeful election here, is we can send that message that Rapid City also cares about education. Right now there's a narrative that we need to change, that education doesn't matter. I don't have kids in school. Why does that matter? If you talk to any business owner around here, they can't hire people. I was speaking to someone who works at Monument last night, and they have hundreds of openings as well, and a lot of those come from our schools. We have great things happening. Our teachers are doing wonderful things with their limited resources, but I can only imagine what we could do if we actually gave them the resources that they need to help out their students. Yeah, period. So, like I said, Jamie covered a lot of it, so I guess questions now?
Yeah.
Comments, concerns?
Oh, sorry. So we'll, just so you know, this is live streaming, so we'll repeat your question so it can be heard on the mic.
Okay, so my kids go to Birkeland. He is getting kicked out of Birkeland. He's in a preschool program, and preschool and special ed are being relocated. He's going to Pine right now, just going because hardship for our family and trying to get kids to two different schools. As far as I know, they're gonna try to keep using the main building in Canyon Lake until the boiler goes. So it's only barely moving along in the building. The principal has resigned, the dean has resigned. So it's really looking deep in that Canyon Lake. Do you have any thoughts on how you could help improve that situation?
I agree, it is looking bleak at Canyon Lake. So what she had mentioned was that the dean had resigned, the principal had resigned, they're moving classes around, the boiler. You might have heard about that a couple months back, the boiler issue, that we're just going to keep using Canyon Lake until the boiler goes. As far as what we can do about that right now, unfortunately we are, from my understanding, and I look forward to talking with the business office, and I know you've met with the business office, so maybe Jamie has some she can add to this too. But unfortunately we are kind of at a place where we don't have places to put kids, and so we do end up shuffling them around. I know that same thing's happening on the north side, where we are taking kids to Canyon Lake actually. So we would definitely have to work on those borderlines, and hopefully we can keep kids together as much as possible. But a lot of that does come from Canyon Lake needed some stuff done to it 3 years ago, and so we are kind of in an emergency situation there. So I'll be honest, I don't have a great solution, but.
And I think one of the things too, looking at problems from multiple facets, because also I think we have to address like transportation, and that's another area in our district that I think sometimes gets overlooked. And one of the things I think that's important, teachers are hugely important, but I was just talking to someone, our classified staff is really important. Our bus drivers, our paraprofessionals, our custodians, and that we need to value them and even look into that. So that's something that I think as a school board member, like I do think sometimes it gets overlooked, but that we need to look at even the transportation part, because we have to have staff and resources. Like if we move you and need to transfer you, I think that's a piece that, like, it's unfortunate we have to do, and I hate that for you as a mama. I can't imagine. But that we need to look at that part of the problem too, that it's not just we just moved kids, but what are we doing there? So that's one of the things I think we need to look at, is really look at multiple sides of an issue.
And I asked about transportation before, since he's been partially transported.
Right. Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. Any kind of forced transfer, we have to figure out some way to get those kids there.
We were told absolutely not. I even had him tested to see if he could get special services, because then he would qualify, but whatever, so.
Yeah, it's a people issue that we're running into. Like Jamie mentioned, we just don't have people. Even if we could find the money to get a bus or set up those bus routes or something, someone's got to drive the bus.
For the special ed.
Right.
The bus is already going.
Right. So.
And one thing that might be, that there's power in numbers and power in multiple voices, and definitely getting multiple parents in this situation. And because sometimes, unfortunately, it's kind of like if you think about one nagging bug in your ear and you're like, oh, I can swat that one bug. But, coming as multiple voices, and even parents, one of the things I think that's been beautiful about this campaign that I've seen is there are people out there, whether they have a kid at Canyon Lake or not, whether they're a parent or not, that will fight for you. And I think really just reaching out and finding people who will fight for you and speak for you and say, this is a problem and we need to fix it. Right. And that through the summer we have the time and the opportunity to do that. And so I would absolutely encourage that to, network with people, get more voices to stomp their feet and say, help me fix this, help me make this better.
Right, and us being, I don't want to speak for us being two of those people.
Oh, absolutely.
That's one thing. Like I don't know the solution today, but I can confidently say that I will look for a solution to that, because I wasn't even aware that was happening until I was just talking to someone else about it earlier today. So.
Very good question.
So it's clear that we need a bond for new buildings, and we probably need an opt-out. Historically, those succeed after multiple attempts. Not here, in other places, but it's not unusual for the first one or the first two to fail. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, because I think you'll have a lot to, when you get on the board, you'll learn a lot more about the current situation, but have you thought about like a strategy about thinking of going for an opt-out, or going for a bond, or going for both, or going for multiple small bonds every year? I don't know. I don't know the answer.
So repeating the question first, so talking about that a bond or an opt-out is going to be necessary as far as funding facilities and addressing some of those issues, and what do we think as far as an opt-out versus a bond versus multiple small bonds? From my perspective and what I understand from when I met with the business office, I think the first direction to go is with a bond before an opt-out, mainly because I now understand that with an opt-out, the rates of taxation is different for business versus ag versus residential, and businesses get hit the heaviest, and that's part of the reason that they believe in 2015 it wasn't successful. So that if we went on that headlong first, it probably wouldn't go well. So I think that a bond's way. The hard part, I like the idea of multiple bonds over time. I just feel like we have so many holes in the dam right now that I just don't know that we can afford to wait. Like, I don't know that we can afford to say, well, in 5 years, like, I feel like we gotta do big things at once. I just don't know how, like I said, how we can push it out any farther. When we have parents going through this right now, and we fixed Canyon Lake, well, what happens to the ceiling at wherever? Like, so in my mind, I think we would have to really, really write well a pretty large barn to start with, I think.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. We have a lot to handle now, so we kind of got to push it now. Once again, I've said this a million times in my campaign, and I've said it at school board meetings. 56% of people wanted the bond, so people want a bond, just not the 60% that we, unfortunately, in my opinion, need for state law. So I for sure would want to bring a bond, and like Jamie said, there is things that we have to do right now, and we got to take care of those things. We can't pick and choose, and because then the next year another school's falling apart and we're transferring someone else. That being said, sustainability once again, we're going to have to keep going with it. So unfortunately, probably a big one now, and then smaller one, smaller one, smaller one. And as you said, it does often fail the first time. I think a lot of us were expecting to bring back the bond, and then COVID hit. So we heard a lot and we learned a lot from that last bond about what we needed, and we have built south now. Well, we're building south now. So it's definitely going to look different as to what we need. I guess it's already 3 years. 3 years later, it feels like just yesterday. 3 years later, what we need in the bond. So it might look a lot different, but starting with that big one to fix those main issues, and then we got to keep going. We can't wait another, how long it's been, 50 years?
Yep,
50 years to pass another one. We gotta keep on it.
Yeah. Colton.
Yeah, thank you. So I've seen no conversation about the increase in population, both from people moving here, but also from Ellsworth expanding. There's like 20,000 or more people that are moving here because of Ellsworth, and I haven't heard anybody talking about how the district can accommodate that influx of kids because Douglas won't. So I was wondering what your plans are for an increasing student population.
Mike, you want to go first on this one?
I sure can. Part of that, once again, I feel like this is all I talk about, but part of that would also come from a bond. I think we probably are going to need a third high school here really soon. Central and Stevens are both filling up real fast. Stevens is already holding classes in hallways. So I guess, I didn't repeat the question. He asked about the growing population, especially with Douglas and the Ellsworth stuff going on. You were better about that. But we are going to need to build that. So like you said, I agree. We need to start talking about it, and we need to look at where are we expecting those people to come in, so that we don't end up shifting families around last minute, where we have a plan of, in a couple years, your kid might need to move, so that families can start to do that sort of thing. Because hopefully we have a couple years to get going on it, but I agree, it's something we need to start thinking about right now and start building some new schools, because we can't have class sizes of 40, 50, even if we do try to shove them all into Central. It's a safety hazard, it's a learning. You're not going to learn if you have 50 kids in class.
And I think, I absolutely agree with Michael. I think, we've both talked about that forward planning, strategic planning. I was part of the strategic planning committee for my church, which is a lot smaller scale, like 300 people, but we had a plan for 5 years in advance. I think part of the problem right now is there's no plan. We don't have a plan. So I think as board members, we need to sit down and say, hey, when I'm gone, let's say I stay on the board for 3 years. God willing, that happens. But let's say I stay on the board 3 years, so the person who comes after me isn't going, well, what do we do now? So I think that's I definitely think looking into studies of growth, there are experts who know where houses are being built, so I think we really need to map that out and say, okay, in 7 years, where is the major growth, so we can be very strategic and intentional about where we shift places, where we maybe add on to a school, because that's options. There are places that we can expand and build on classrooms, so maybe that's an option for this certain area. So I think that's a big part of it, is having a very specific, informed plan. I also think we have an opportunity. I'm going to take a leap on this one, but I think we have an opportunity to collaborate with the Douglas School District and say, you guys know what's happening, we know what's happening. We border, how can we work, because we're both dealing with this growth. So why should we both try in our silos to figure this out when, who knows, they may have some ingenious idea we don't know about, or vice versa. So I think there's an opportunity for collaboration even between the two districts to figure this out, because it's going to affect both of us significantly.
And even beyond that, there's places that this has happened to. Mm-hmm. We're not the first place to get a new,
right,
I don't know exactly what it is, plane.
That's a plane, a large plane.
A new plane. We're not the first place to get a new one. So looking to those districts as well and saying, or other places where maybe even Sioux Falls, when Amazon moved in, I think
right,
they had an influx.
Mm-hmm.
Looking to other districts. We don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time. There's people that know. Let's listen to them.
So the question from the back was, what do you do to get people engaged to vote, knowing that the voter turnout, I believe, was 11%? It was 11 to 12%.
6,000 people.
Yes.
6,004.
Yes, in a district that has, I think we have like 80,000 registered voters. Obviously, everybody in every district can't vote, but the question is, how do you engage voters? And that's a challenging question. One of the things I think for me, I try to reach people where they are and understanding how education affects them. We have a large retired population. That's just a fact. Many retired people say, my kids are done, my kids are out of school, this doesn't matter. So part of it is in when I meet people, in my social media posts, in my communication, is how does this affect you? And I think really meeting people where they are and understanding, for an example that I use, and said I work in healthcare, so a perfect example is saying, oh, well, we can't recruit certain physicians because the schools aren't sufficient. So if you as a person has a medical need, you don't have to drive to Denver, see that physician, stay in a hotel, drive back. You've now spent $500 to $800 on one doctor's visit. If we could have recruited that physician here, you wouldn't have spent any of that, and the likelihood is you're not going to just have to go one time. So how does that affect you? That's exactly how, on a very personal. So I think really reaching people and understanding how this affects them on an individual level, whether they're a parent or not, whether they're an educator or not, I think is a major way of doing that. And when I've been door knocking, I've just been saying, 5 to 10% of the people made the decisions for all of us. Are you okay with that? That your tax dollars and were decided by 5 to 10% of people.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing. The only thing I would add to that is, as she mentioned, door knocking. I think that we're really making an effort to talk to as many people as we can, and things like this are great. We love having you here. But the unfortunate part of things like this is a lot of times you're all friends. So we're making sure to get out there and talk to people who may not be friends, and explaining those things to them of how this actually affects you. And one bit of optimism with that is when I have been out door knocking, it seems like there are a lot more people paying attention. When I went last year with one of the candidates, there were so many people that had no idea anything that was going on with the school board election. They were like, oh, there's a school board election? And so that's a little bit of positivity with that. When I have been door knocking, it seems like people are paying attention now. It seems like that might be one tiny little positive that came out of what happened last year, is more people are paying attention to what is going on in our schools, and I think you're right. If we can get them out, and I think we can, that does not represent Rapid City, and I think people are starting to understand that a little bit better. Yeah, go. Part two. Yeah.
Okay, so I really think that, as we can see from certain political movements, that people are passionate. People get out and vote when they are excited about something. Now, we all know that the state of education in Rapid City is not great. We know that we need buildings, but it has not been enough to get people excited either to vote for candidates nor for bonds. So I'm wondering if you have big ideas that might excite people and get them passionate in a movement about not only voting for you, but improving our schools.
I'll go first on that one. She asked how we were going to get voters excited, and if we had any big ideas for that. One that I actually was listening to the mayor having a press conference about and really struck a chord with me is early childhood education, and the effect that has on our community as a whole. He was talking about it with crime. If we can get early childhood education to take off, that's going to help with our crime, which then helps with our economy, which helps with everything. So that would be kind of the first thing I would say is early childhood education, because we're helping the community understand that once again is we are finding students, from what I've talked to elementary school teachers about, that come in and can't identify the letter A, let alone know its sound or any of that stuff. They can't identify a letter, or the number 1 or whatever. And so that early childhood education is going to have a long-term effect. And then the other thing that I would say is, and this sounds weird coming from me, but our sports programs and our activities programs, if we can start getting our academics down, a lot of people care a lot about how do we do in football. And all of that stuff kind of supports that. So if we can expand our schools themselves, that helps out with bringing people into our community and bringing in those activities and sports.
And I think it's funny, I don't want to feel, none of this is planned or scripted, I promise. But yeah, we just think a lot of like, that's actually honestly another gift I think of this campaign, because I don't know if I would have even met Michael otherwise. But the early childhood piece I think is, you know, if any of you know the Teacher of the Year this year, and the programming that she designed for early childhood, like just got me so excited. And I think I do agree that that's huge. And it's honestly, I think it's something that people are so aware of, because just childcare in general is in such a crisis that I think people are much more aware of that than they were 5 years ago, because so many people are affected by the crisis of trying to find preschool, daycare, anything. So I think that because it touches so many people, I think we really can get people excited and on board about that, because it does affect so many families. I also think just highlighting and really, and this is one of the things I, you know, in my social media, and I have a social media manager because I'm old and don't really know what I'm doing, but getting people excited about the things that are happening and making our community aware of what great things are happening. Because I feel like sometimes, and I get it, teachers are they're so busy, and so who has time to be posting things and sharing things? And you know, but when I heard the presentation more about how awesome the Lakota immersion program is, and that it's waitlisted right now, and what amazing statistics there are with kids who learn a language at that age, like people are excited about that. People have asked, can we get a Spanish immersion program? Can we get a, you know, and so if we can get people knowing, I was talking to somebody, my daughter's in a K1 combo class, and they said, oh, that's a thing. I'm like, it's great, because she's not as strong of a reader, but she's already advanced to first grade level in math, and getting the community, like finding ways to really, really advertise what great things are happening. And I think like resource-wise, is the school board, is it a task force? Like, I don't quite know the answer to that part, but I think getting it much more out there, the good things that are happening, so also we don't get mired in the like, well, the school's falling down, well, the teachers, you know, and so that we can talk about, we can celebrate the wins and really get that out there and be like, hey, community, look how awesome our immersion program is, and look how awesome our debate team that's going to national is. Like, let's make those big deals, you know, let's make those big deals.
We would really appreciate that.
And I would love to do it for you.
Right, yeah. And once again, we're very the same, but the immersion schools, I forgot about that, but that is another thing that I think a lot of people are excited about, and I'm very excited about. And expanding it, I think we're looking at, I think the current board, you know, is looking at a Spanish immersion, but I would like to see a Spanish immersion come, and maybe other things,
Yeah.
like expanding those opportunities is always a good thing in my opinion.
I have a follow-up question to that. So all of those things that you're excited about are reliant on good leadership at the top of the district. And so I'm wondering if you could express your thoughts on the role of the board and the role of the superintendent in an effectively run district.
I think it's your turn to go first.
Okay. So she asked about leadership and the role of the board and the role of the superintendent. First off, we need to get a superintendent. I think that is the first thing that the board needs to focus on, is making sure that we do have that good leadership and something to bring our district together. Jamie had mentioned a little bit about how right now there's some kind of disjoint things happening depending on which school you go to, and I think the superintendent and the board kind of bring that unity. I think a lot of what the board exists for is policy and making sure everyone's kind of doing their job, and kind of, it's almost like a background role in my opinion. Like we drive it, but then we find the people who are going to do the best. I don't know the most about how to build a building. I'm not gonna draw up those plans, but I'm gonna find the person who does. I don't know the best, I probably could say I know the best math curriculum. I don't know the best English curriculum, but I'm gonna find the people who do know the best English curriculum. So I think a lot of the board's responsibilities are providing that vision and then finding the people to carry out that vision.
And I agree. So the first thing being leadership, and I mean the board's job to find, hire, and evaluate a superintendent. So assessing their effectiveness and assessing if they are carrying out that vision. So one is finding a superintendent. Two is having that assessment, having that accountability. Like I think on some levels, like the board's job is to hold accountability on some levels, but also it is, I think, to support the experts. And that's one of the things I think that's a missing piece right now, is that a board of a company, of a social, like needs to support their staff and employees, and to say, what do we need to do to make this vision happen? What tools do you need? And to go back to assessing that and saying, okay, we like this immersion program, what tools do you need to make it happen? And so we need to really be listening and address those needs and listen to the experts and say, and ideally, obviously your superintendent being an expert and saying they know, like, yeah, we want this program, but here's the things I need to make it happen. Okay, come back board, how can we figure out how to help them make this happen?
Thank you. Just to kind of bounce off the upper admin, in my conversations with board members, I've heard that there's a lot of distrust and miscommunication between upper admin and even building admin. But, and it just boils down to the fact that admin don't trust board and the board doesn't trust admin. So how can we rectify that? How can we restore a unified district that's not going to work against itself?
So the question was, I feel like I'm the repeater here. So the question was, how do we restore trust and confidence between admin, including upper admin, building admin, and the school board?
So yeah, I have heard the same thing, that I've heard from teachers that don't feel like their principal can do anything, and then I talk to the principal, and the principal says, hey, I don't feel like I can do this, and then you keep going up the line, and everyone's worried about their job. And so I think that's a lot of it is honestly just saying, like, how do we restore trust? A lot of it is saying, I trust you. Like when I hear about, hey, this is happening at my kid's school, my first reaction would never and will never be, oh, we better make sure the teacher pays for that. That's a lot of it right there. Or the principal or whoever, we're gonna have a conversation and telling them right off the bat, that same thing. We're gonna have a conversation, we're gonna get to the bottom of this. Do bad things happen in our district? Sure, bad things happen in every company, everywhere. But you can't assume that. You have to assume best intent. And so that would be how I would fix it. And another part of it is I've been there. I've had letters written to the school board about me when I was in the school district. So I know what it's like being on the other side. And I would tell them that too. Like, hey, I know that this happens. I know that I can trust you, and I'm gonna hear what you said. I'm gonna go to the parent. I'm gonna say the same thing. I'm gonna go to the admin and say the same thing. So just information gathering, I think, is a big part of that before you make any kind of decision. Is just listening to everybody.
I also think too, I think Michael's probably a little more expert on answering this question, but I also think we have an opportunity, and that's one of my buzzwords. Like, there's a lot of opportunities out there, and I think there's perfect opportunities for whether you call them committees, task force. I thought it was great. I was on the inter-school parent council, and so I would meet with multiple parents with Dr. Simon, and I would ask questions, and sometimes it was like, oh, I didn't know that was happening, or I didn't know, and it wasn't a matter of, I don't think it was trying to be hidden. I think it was just like, no one really knew the conduit of how to get that information where it needed to be. And so I think if we have, let's say there's a curriculum task force, and we say, hey, we need parents, educators, let's just have an open conversation, and then they come back and communicate with the board. So it feels more like a two-way street, and it doesn't feel like a conflictual relationship that because families, parents, students are important, parents are important, admins are important, educators, and so that all the voices are present. So I think there's opportunities for that, for whether it be town hall kind of situations, or whether it be, they said, a task force that's, hey, we're really struggling with discipline in elementary schools. Let's get all the admins and some parents on a Zoom and say, let's talk about this. So I think we have an opportunity to kind of break up those silos and open the lanes, open the conduits of communication, and so there is more of that trust and transparency, that it's all going in two directions.
And if I could add on to that a little bit, she mentioned the town halls and that sort of thing. And maybe it's different for other ones, I served on our math curriculum committee a couple years back. We invited parents. to come check out our materials before we did anything. We crafted up a letter, we sent it home. So a lot of that stuff is already happening. So how do we make it so that parents come out and talk to us beforehand, and that admin talk to us beforehand before we get into something like our current situation, so that we can kind of avoid these and have that open conversation and avoid this finger pointing that happens.
We talked about the banned books business and how as potentially it could go into your terms as elected board officials. Can you just address it a little bit and your perspectives on it?
Yeah, I shouldn't have brought that up, huh? Now you're asking about it.
Go there.
Right into that one.
So she asked about the banned book situation. So my opinion on that is, once again, if those books were chosen by our English teachers, I would expect that they have some literary merit to them. And so that would be the first thing I would ask is, why were these books chosen? What about them is it? The Fun Home book, I absolutely can understand why parents would be concerned about that one. Some of those images may be not appropriate. And another thing to consider with that is that it was for English 12 with parent permission. A parent could opt them out of any of those. So Fun Home I can understand. The other four, I honestly, and this is maybe bold and maybe it's going to ruin my whole campaign, but I'll say it. The other four I honestly don't understand. If we start banning books because of graphic descriptions, we have to ban Romeo and Juliet. Like, where do we draw the line on those ones? So Fun Home I absolutely can understand. The other four, I would really, really like to have some conversations about those ones, because there's some reason those English teachers picked them. And I from my understanding, the very full disclosure, I haven't read any of them. From my understanding, what I have heard, they are things that our students experience, and our students deserve the choice. They could read none of them. The choice to be able to read those books.
And I think on the whole subject, I think one of the big things is, again, as Colton mentioned, is transparency and understanding the process. I think when this whole discussion happened, I think there was a lot of, well, this happened and that happened, and it wasn't actually accurate. So I think that everyone understanding the process, I think it would be beneficial to the district to say, even if it was, as cheese balls, it sounds like a PowerPoint, this was the process that happened, and be very clear about that, including these were books that were choices. These were books that required parental permission, that, again, in that transparency and saying, this is the process, yes, this is the process that occurred, and these were all the fail-safes and steps. So I think it kind of ties into that trust and transparency and saying, yes, we as a board, and even if I personally as a parent am uncomfortable with something, that doesn't mean that I should be able to make a choice for another parent. And that I respect that other parents have the right with their children to make other choices, and so I think we need to respect that choice, and so to make it clear what the process was, make that very apparent and open, and not be the first thing that came out in the newspaper article and then the second thing that this person said. So I think that there are opportunities to say, hey, this is the process, and yes, we are behind this process, whether we as board members on a personal level agree with whatever, this is the process was followed, and we respect that decision that was made in the end. So I think that's a big part of this, is being clear about the process, and that we, whether it's popular or not, we know the process and we support that, and the process worked.
Parents' rights means all parents. Just to add on to this, one thing you said that I forgot. It is absolutely your parental right to say, my kid can't read that book, and any English teacher that I know, any teacher period that I know, would find something else for you to read. You do not get the right to say, your kid cannot.
So it ties into that piece, but at the last school board meeting, one of the school board members made a comment about the surplus list, which is where those books came from, and how if there are 2,000 things on that surplus list, I'm not going to know everything on there. As a school board member, what are your thoughts of understanding everything that is going to get approved and taking the time of going through everything that's on the agenda?
So the question is, as a school board member, what our thoughts are on reading and understanding everything in the agenda. And I did actually have a conversation with Lori about this. I will say that it is a challenge. I have actually, part of my campaign process was I reached out to every board member and I said, what do you wish someone had told you before you were on the school board? What would you like to change? What do you see as the challenges? Because I believe if I'm going to come to the table, then I need to sit and work with everybody at the table. One of the challenges is that some of that reading can get lengthy, and heavy. I think one of the things I think I have to be careful about, and that is the whole concept of the consent agenda and putting too much in a consent agenda. I think that's part of it, because when you have A through Q, I mean, that's a lot to say, yep, we're good with that. So I think that's something that just needs to be looked at. Like, does that mean that maybe something has to wait till another meeting because we didn't want to have L through Z on the consent? Maybe it does. Okay, like, we all know that most people on the board, like, we're working, we have other, but like, so maybe that's something that needs to be addressed, that they said these huge long, I mean, I've looked at it, sometimes it said 14, 16, 18 things on a consent agenda. I don't know that that's ideal. That you may be rubber stamping something that you're not fully aware of. So I think that's something that should be looked at. I also think there are, there's probably highlight points where I say, okay, surplus is on this one. I really need to, I know that list is really long, so I really need to take the time to look at that. And as a board member, to speak up if we're in the study session meeting and say, hey, I don't have time to get through all this and I don't feel comfortable with rubber stamping it, and being able to voice that and say, this is a lot. I think I need time to process, and standing up and saying that, I think all of those things are really important. I do think, it's important not to just rubber stamp and just to assume and presume, and that's really important to process and know, what you're doing, but recognizing that yes, it can be a very heavy and lengthy task to read through a lot of that literature. So then how do we break that up? How do we address that so that we're not necessarily skipping important things?
Right. I would agree to a certain extent there that it is a lot. I try to read the whole thing every single week, but sometimes it's a 20-page document, and I look for the red parts where I know things have changed, and I make sure to read those. The other thing, though, with that whole situation is, sure, someone else put it on the surplus list, but it was brought to the board's attention, and then at that point, the board gets to make a decision. If we're just going to say, hey, we trust everyone, why do we have a board? If we're just going to say, if it's in here, we're good, that kind of makes the board pointless. And so a lot of it is when a community or a teacher or a parent or whoever does bring it up, then at that point, then you do need to make sure. But I would agree, I'm not going to say that I'm going to read every single word, every single page, but I am going to look it over. I saw them when I read through it. So I would think that big things like that would get noticed. But I'm not going to say, I will be honest and say that I'm not going to read every word, but once it is brought to our attention, that is when it is crucial to educate yourself, to understand why it was there and understand what you're going to do about it. Out of time? 5 minutes. Okay. Last question?
Any other burning questions? Colton?
Yes, thank you. So I understand that you all have been endorsed by a certain group in Rapid City, and that other board members have been endorsed by other groups in Rapid City, and that a lot of them work interconnectedly on the board. So I just want to know, what is your plan for working through partisan issues and still acting as a unified or at least organized board?
So Colton over here asked us, there are some partisan issues on our board. He asked us how we would work through some stuff like that. So the first thing I would say is getting us back to what our actual goals are, and getting us focused on our schools and our students and our staff and none of this other nonsense. I was talking with some of you earlier about how I might address this, and one of the things is bringing forth those issues and making them apparent. Like say, God forbid, one of us wins and the other one doesn't, or whatever. We unfortunately don't gain a whole lot. But we can bring stuff to the table where we say, hey, let's pass a bond, or hey, we need to address the staffing shortage, and then they have to vote no on it. And so it forces us to have those conversations that right now, I think those conversations are just being ignored. We're not even starting to address them, so we can just pretend like they don't exist. Where one of us at least can bring it forward, we can start to maybe break down some of those walls of partisan, to use your words, the partisan issues that lie behind them, and get really, we just need to get back to the root of why are we here. And it's not because of Fox News or CNN or whoever you listen to, it's because of the kids, it's because of our staff, it's because of these buildings. So really just bringing the actual issues to the forefront, I would say.
And I think for me, I feel, I 100% agree. I think, knock on wood, I do personally feel that one of my strengths, like, for example, when I was in college, I was on the, I was the president of the Religious Council, which meant 12 groups, and we had a $60,000 budget. So all of these 12 different religious groups had to figure out how this money was going to be spent and how fairly, and obviously they were vastly different groups. And so I think, like, really, like I said, getting down to commonalities and saying, look, like, I have friends, associates, I have legislators that are colleagues that, like, so obviously I'm not unwilling to work with people, and I think making it very apparent that yes, I'm obviously not only willing to work with one side. I think you need to really get that out there, like, yep, I didn't campaign under a party, that wasn't my intention, and to really make it very obvious that yes, like, I am willing to work and listen to ideas, and that none of us are gonna get anywhere if we just sit and have this conflict constantly, and none of us came here to have conflict and not make progress. So I think, like, they said, vividly illustrating, like, yes, I'm someone who can work with different people and is willing to do that. You know, I mean, my job as a physical therapist, I'm on a team with 10 to 12 different people every day that are deciding things about, honestly, a patient's life. And so it's something I know how to do, and so I'm hoping we can remind everyone that we can all do that. And that it said that it's been apparent that we're related. It's just the step for me, like reaching out to board members. Like, obviously, if I didn't care, I could have not emailed or talked to any of them. But obviously, I care. So I think just making it very, very apparent that that's what we need to do to make progress.
I think Bishop Carr spoke to that a little bit at the last board meeting, actually, when he said in front of everybody, they didn't actually take a vote on the books, but like, moving forward, I want everyone to know that my personal opinions do not affect anything. I'm going to do what's best for kids. And kind of, I really appreciated that he said that, because that's what we need more of. Is I don't care what I think. I mean, I do. I have thoughts. I have opinions. But I'm mostly going to hear from what our teachers, our students, our community, what are they saying to me, and listen to most of them. If our community wants something that I disagree with, then that's what I'm going to do. Yeah.
It sounds like you're going to be spending a lot of time putting out fires and dealing with issues that you inherit. Anything out of the box, you know, that's not a front and center issue that might make us national news for good reasons? You know, it's like something really good for kids that.
I don't think I've gotten there yet.
Yeah,
I don't, the question of is there something out of the box and new wonderful, I don't think I've gotten there yet. I would love to. I would love to get to a point that that's where I am. But yeah, I think there's too much smoke from the fires right now. But a couple years down the road, that'd be awesome.
Right, yeah, I've had a couple of conversations where they've been like, what are you going to do tomorrow? And it's like, well, I can tell teachers that I love them, but that's all I can really do tomorrow. But kind of like Jamie was talking about, we can set into motion things that hopefully 15 years from now are making national news. Can we make national news tomorrow for something good? Probably not, if we're being honest. What was that? Lakota immersion. That'd be a good one too. Yeah. What was that?
After school programs.
After school programs. See, this is why we're doing these things.
school uniforms. I'm a one-issue voter. All school uniforms.
Well, I think I appreciate everybody's time, amazing questions, amazing engagement. This is, you guys are why, like, you inspire me, and that people are involved and you care and you're passionate, and that gives me the energy to be passionate and to keep knocking on doors and to keep doing this and to keep getting people out to vote. So we're so appreciative of everybody who came, and tell your neighbors, tell your friends, to get out there and vote.
Yeah, same.